Hare Krishna, Jai Srila Prabhupada. So text 28. Avyaktadini bhutani vyaktamadhyani bharata avyaktanidhananyeva tatraka paridevana. Krishna here, he is using the materialistic argument to persuade Arjuna. So very similar to 26th, where 26th verse, Krishna spoke about how atachainam nityajatam nityam va manyase mritam. 26th basically says that, O Arjuna, if you think that, forget the fact that I am saying that there is a spirit soul. If you think that there is no spirit soul, but the consciousness has generated from this material combination, there was still... Hare Krishna, can everyone please be on mute? So the 26th says that the consciousness comes from a particular material combination. When a particular set of material elements come together, at some stage the consciousness is generated, and then when they are dismantled, the consciousness becomes vanquished, and merely it is a combination of chemicals, and nobody laments for a bunch of chemicals, and at some point it may produce some emotions combinations, but nobody laments because we are wasting so many chemicals on a daily basis. Even in the warfare you will waste so many chemicals, so you should not lament. So that is the materialistic argument. And even here in this verse 28, the other angle of materialistic argument Krishna is presenting is the law of conservation. Law of conservation means the material elements will be in unmanifest state in the beginning, and they become manifested, and then again they become unmanifested. Then what is the reason to lament? In total, the law of conservation of energy exists. Nothing is lost eventually. It is just combination of material elements. So even if you think like that, there is no reason to lament. So Prabhupada explains a little more on that angle. Like if you want to go deep into that thought, how the skyscraper is manifested. Skyscraper is manifested predominantly from earth element. And the earth element actually comes from water. So we have seen in Srimad Bhagavatam how different material elements are generated in the beginning of the creation. When the universe is created, Mahavishnu glances and agitates this unmanifested material nature called Pradhana. It remains like a unmanifested material entity. And by the glance of Mahavishnu, that unmanifested material entity, material energy rather, becomes agitated, and it produces three modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And then the glance of Mahavishnu injects the spirit souls into this agitated material energy. So the living entities have a tendency to enjoy, have an identity separate from that of being a servant of the Lord. That is called false ego. They want a separate identity and they have enjoying desire. That when interacts with these three modes of material nature, meaning you could exploit the nature or enjoy the material nature in three modes: in goodness, or passion or ignorance. So when the false ego of the living entity interacts with mode of ignorance, it produces these sense objects, because that is how the living entity wants to enjoy. When the false ego interacts with mode of goodness, it produces mind, and then the demigods, and so on and so forth. And when the false ego interacts with mode of passion, it produces intelligence. By intelligence, one gets things done, one works. So it is quite natural. So this false ego interaction with these three varieties causes variety of enjoyment, and then it produces different things. The way to understand is, say for example, you want to start a company for a particular purpose. Your company wants to make some machinery. Then obviously you will go and hire people who have that particular skill set so that they can satisfy your needs in generating a product appropriate to your objectives. Similarly, the living entity, when he wants to enjoy in mode of ignorance, when the false ego is in interaction with mode of ignorance, it also hires, or it produces, it puts together a company which is nothing but this set of senses, sense objects, and the sense material elements. So the first element that comes about is the sound. So the sound is originated when false ego is interacted with mode of ignorance. And that sound, if it has to be penetrated, it needs this material element called ether. Sound travels in ether. And when that sound has to be perceived by the living entity, it needs a sense called ear. So first sound is generated, then the ether is generated, and then our sense ear is generated. And then from sound comes air. And from air, skin is generated, our sense to perceive the air. And like that, and air actually is the medium. The sound, the sound is the sense object. Ether is the medium in which the sense object travels, and ear is the sense with which we can hear this sense object. Similarly, the next sense object that is generated is touch. And for touch to be perceived, we need air and skin. Like that. And then fire is generated, water is generated, earth is generated. So like that, these 5 material elements come about. So anyway, that is going into a little bit of creation. And why Prabhupada mentions all this? Because anyway, these are all manifested from unmanifested. And ultimately it gives rise to most glorious things in the material realm, like the skyscrapers and anything wonderful that man makes. So nobody laments for when a skyscraper is demolished for building another skyscraper, because it is just, after all, material elements which are freely available in the world. The law of conservation of energy always exists. So we bring down the skyscraper to build another big skyscraper. So then what is the reason to lament? So that is the argument that Krishna is making. So Prabhupada says in the purport that there are 2 kinds of people who either believe in the soul or who don't believe in the soul. So Krishna has covered those 2 aspects, both of those aspects. If you don't believe in the soul, then there is no reason to lament, either through the law of conservation of energy or according to 26th verse. Nobody laments for a bunch of chemicals. And if you do believe in the soul, then also there is no lamentation, because the soul, according to Vedic authority, passes through various stages of the body, and the soul is the actual eternal thing, eternal substance. Na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sataha. The soul is the sat, whereas the material body is the asat. And the way to understand is nicely explained here in the purport, second paragraph. Prabhupada says, how in the dream we acquire a different body. We think that we are something else than what we are at this point. Completely different personality. But when we wake up, we are a completely different person. And we don't even remember the dream. Sometimes we do, but we completely forget our activity in the dream world when we are awake. But it is the same person who is experiencing both. So what is real? Is that the dream, the body in the dream is real? Or which is correct? The body in the dream is correct, or the body that we are experiencing in the awakened stage is correct? So Prabhupada says both are not correct. Only the spirit soul is correct, because he is the same person who is experiencing both. But it doesn't mean that this body is false. It is after all the energy of the Lord, and therefore the energy of the Lord is truth. But it is temporary. The body doesn't last long. In fact, it is changing at every moment. And over a particular period of time, the body seems to have completely changed. So for the asat, there is no bhava. Na sato vidyate bhavaha. There is no endurance for material body. So the I that is experiencing is spirit. And we have a spiritual body, but because we have forgotten that and can only remember this material body, either in the dreaming stage or in the actual awakened stage, we are said to be in illusion. And the whole point of Bhagavad Gita is to make us come out of the illusion of identifying ourselves on the material platform and come to that spiritual platform. Sanatana Goswami, he was such a learned person. And he was a big minister also. Practically, he was running the whole government of Nawab. And when he went to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what he said, Kiyami kene amai jare tapatre. I don't know why I am suffering these threefold material miseries. I don't even know who I am. Kichu na jani. I don't know who I am. Please instruct me. So that is the position of a materialist, even though he is situated on the most educated platform. It is also called technically aham mameti concept. Aham mama iti. Rishabhadeva, he summarizes this whole thing in a very nice prayer in Srimad Bhagavatam. He says, Pumshastriyami thuni bhavametam tayor mito hrudaya grandhi mahuhu ato gruha kshetra sutapta vittair janasya mohoyam aham mameti. So he says, this whole material illusion starts from the attraction between man and woman. Pumsaha striya mithuni bhavam, the attraction, sensual attraction. Tayor mitho hridaya grandhi mahuhu. Because of that mitha, of that sensual attraction, hridaya grandhi, it forms a knot. When you actually become related as a wife or a husband or a girlfriend or a boyfriend, when you start a relation, that generates a knot in the heart. Hridaya grandhi. That hridaya grandhi has been used extensively in Srimad Bhagavatam. where it says how to get rid of Hridaya Grandhi in the second chapter of the first canto. Bhidyate Hridaya Grandhi Chidhyante Sarva Samchaya Kiyante Chasya Karmani Drishta Evatmanishware. That Hridaya Grandhi is destroyed by hearing about the Lord, chanting about the Lord. Shrinvatam Swakatha Krishna Punyashravana Kirtanaha Hridyantastho hi abhadrani Vidhunoti Suhrit Satam Nashtaprayeshu abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. By regularly hearing about the Lord, chanting about the Lord, attending classes on Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada translates that verse. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya as by regular attendance on Srimad Bhagavatam classes. This heart, the knot in the heart becomes slackened and is destroyed. So this is what Rishabhadeva is calling as Hridaya Grandhi. Hridaya Grandhi Mahu. And then what happens as a result of Hridaya Grandhi? Ato Gruha Kshetra Sutapta Vittair Janasya Mohoyam Aham Mameti. He starts acquiring Griha, Kshetra, land or business or occupation, Suta, children, Apta, relatives, society, networking, Vitta, wealth, and in this way, Janasya Mohoyam, this causes the whole illusion. We are caught in a network of illusion. This is called Aham Mama Iti. The body is mine, or the bodily belongings are mine. These are all mine. These relatives, this bodily expansions, they're all mine. This is the illusion. Aham Mama Iti. But we keep talking about theory so much. But when we come to practice, we again act on material platform. That is why the path of bhakti, the difference is between the path of bhakti and the path of gnana. The jnanis, they talk about all these things. The material world is illusion, Brahma Satya, Jagan Mithya. But they cannot put that into practice effectively. Whereas in the case of bhakti, we not only talk, but we execute. How do we execute? We get help from the Lord. When we chant the holy name, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That is why we request everyone to take a vow. Because all this theory will manifest in our hearts as a realization only when we put this into practice. And the simple formula to put this into practice is to chant the holy name of the Lord as much as we can. So that is why we are required to take a vow, at least so that we can maintain that much amount of chanting the holy name. And in addition, reading about Krishna, hearing about Krishna, serving the Lord. These are all practical things which will eventually generate the realization. Because realization cannot happen by our own sweet will. It has to happen, it has to descend by the sweet will of the Lord. Atah Sri Krishna Namadi na bhaved grahyam indriyaihi. Our indriyas cannot grasp this realization. This theory will remain as a theory until we render service. Sevon mukhehi jihvado swayameva spuratyadaha. When we render service, when we keep chanting the holy name of the Lord reveals from within. And then vairagya comes. Automatically. You cannot cultivate vairagya for a long time, like jnanis cultivate. Eventually they have to give up because they don't have actual vairagya. They keep cultivating mentally. But actual vairagya in the heart does not manifest until you put this to practice by inviting the Lord to your heart It's like Krishna Surya Sama, Maya hai Andhakar. Yaha Krishna, Taha Mayar Nahi Adhikar. So that is a long-term goal. It's like we should treat it as just like we treat our career goals, long-term goals. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, where we want to be career-wise. A lot of us keep practicing, keep having these goals. And for achieving the goal, we sacrifice so much of short-term happiness, including that of family happiness. If you want to complete MBA, how many people have we seen sacrificing their family happiness? Similarly, for long-term Krishna conscious benefit, we need to give up short-term material sense gratification. But unfortunately, people are all caught up in a short-term happiness. Preya. Preya means instant gratification, without looking for Shreya, our soul's eternal happiness. I used to have a friend in my college when we studied in BITS Pilani. When I met him, he would say, "Oh, life is so beautiful. Life is so joyful." And I asked him why. He said, "Hey, today there is a cricket match, India versus Pakistan. I'm so eagerly waiting for that. And then tomorrow there is this movie show in our theater. And then on Saturday again there is another cricket match. And on Sunday there is this festival grub. Grub means we call the nice festival food that they serve during these holidays and festivals. So life is so beautiful. Life is so joyful." And on that day evening, India lost the match. And then he was morose. And even if India had won the match, because the material platform, after enjoying the happiness, you have to become morose, because that happiness cannot last long, and you will be hankering for continuity of that highest platform of happiness, which will not exist, and then you will be morose. So, sochati kankshati, that is the standard of material happiness. So at the end of life, if we become attracted to instant gratification and don't focus on our Krishna consciousness, then we have to repent. There's one anonymous person who said a beautiful statement. At the end of life, what he said was, on your last day on earth. So he defined basically hell. So what is hell in one sentence? On your last day on earth, the person you became will meet the person you could have become. So that he defined as hell. I'll repeat that. On your last day on earth, the person you became will meet the person you could have become. That means we continually dream of becoming something big. But eventually what we become will be completely different than what we could have become. By utilizing our free will, by utilizing the good instructions we received from the scriptures, from the spiritual master, from all good opportunities that we get on a daily basis. We lose the chance and we become a different person. And that will be the tragedy, the biggest tragedy. So there is nothing stopping us from using our free will in engaging in Krishna consciousness. It is only our eagerness. So there's one pastime in this connection, how the spirit soul is the active principle and not the body. I was, reading a memory by one devotee, Jayadvaita Prabhu, Jayadvaita Swami. He was mentioning how Prabhupada demonstrated, even at the end of his material manifestation, how his spirit was working gloriously, even though his material body was completely weak. So he says during 1977, end of 1977, Prabhupada's health had deteriorated considerably. He had practically no muscular strength. And he would sometimes say during that time, and he would, open his arm like these people who are pahilwans. They open their arm and then show off their muzzle, right? So like that, he would extend his arm and flap his muzzle and says, "Flat tire." So Prabhupada had that sense of jovialness even at that time. So Prabhupada's health had really gone down. And he was just being carried on his asana everywhere. And then every night he would have his disciples read out some portions of his books so that he would lecture whatever he can. And so one night the lecture was happening and the disciple was reading this purports. And Prabhupada was reading and Prabhupada was not able to say anything. He was hardly saying anything. And the disciple was going on reading. And as it went on, Prabhupada was hearing this and he was getting more enlivened. And suddenly he would start speaking one sentence. And then start speaking 2 sentences. And then 4 sentences. And then finally you will see Prabhupada was speaking with full enthusiasm. You will see those 1977 lectures during the summer season or even later. You will see Prabhupada speaking sometimes with full enthusiasm, even though physically he was so ill. So that is the energy that the soul derives from Krishna consciousness. It shows that we are run by our spirit, not by the body. So if we take care of our spirit nicely in Krishna consciousness, we will be healthy, sound, happy, peaceful, and everything. So I'll stop here. Any other questions, comments on what we discussed?